The Science of Life's Beginnings. Development of Life in the Womb. Presented by Dr. Dan Pepin, bioethics consultant.
Going to be talking to you about tonight is not only going to be informative, but I think you can find it to be quite astonishing. Because I've been doing this for a long, long time, and it still amazes me what goes on in the womb. It's incredible. So again, my name is Dr. Pepin, and it's not Dr. Pepper, it's Dr. Pepin. My students used to get me that Dr. Pepper. So they still have Dr. Pepper?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So again, I taught embryology and human development for over 30 years. And I can assure you that many of my students were pro-choice, i.e. pro-abortion, until they took my class. And they had a change of heart. There's no doubt in my mind, because many of them came to my office, told me of things that changed in how they think. And that's what it's all about, educating our youth. Informed consent, if you will. Before they make a decision, they should have all the information. So, again, the goal of this program is to educate students on the science of life in the womb and foster a reverence for life, as they, at a very impressionable age, are starting to formulate their own worldly views, if you will. The program I'm going to share with you tonight is aimed more at, say, a parochial high school or middle school. Okay, so I will be talking a bit about abortion. But the program can be adapted to get into public schools where abortion is never mentioned, ever mentioned. And it can still have the same impact. So I'm going to start with this question. When do you think your life started in your mother's womb? Was that 4 months? 4 weeks? When you were born? The answer is not 4 weeks, not 4 months, but rather the very moment of conception. Developing Human Clinically Oriented Embryology 6th edition is the go-to source. That's the text that I used when I was teaching. This is a quote lifted right from the first 2 pages of the text. The zygote results from the union of an oocyte, which is the egg, and sperm. The zygote is the beginning of a new human being. Human development begins at fertilization, the process during which a male gamete or sperm unites with the female gamete or oocyte to form a single cell human being called a zygote. This multi-potent cell marks the beginning. I repeat that. It marks the beginning of each of us as a unique, living human being. So let's take a closer look at just what's going on within our mother's womb from the time of our conception until our birth. Milestones in each and every one of us as we develop and grew within our mother's womb. So at the very moment of conception, that is the uniting of your father's sperm with your mother's egg, you became a unique, living human being with vast potential. Everything about you is set in stone at that very time of conception. You know, whether you be a boy or a girl, how tall you be, color your hair, color your eyes, how fast you can run, what foods you like, what foods you don't like, we're etched in stone. So let's take a closer look at what's going on at that time of conception and to birth. This is the embryology. That zygote, that multipotent cell, as it begins its journey down the fallopian tube, headed to the uterus, which he or she is going to call home for the next 9 months, that cell begins to divide over and over and over again and becomes immortal. I agree. It doesn't look a whole lot like a living human being. But actually, this is a human being, and she's very much alive. We all look exactly like this when we were 4 days old. If you didn't think you looked like this, perhaps you're not human. Just kidding. The first 8 weeks of your life are called an embryo. Your nose, mouth, ears have already started forming, the heart's beating about 100 beats a minute. See the eyes, lungs here, arm buds, leg buds, and a tail. Yep, we all had a tail, and it didn't fall off like a tadpole. The body grows around the tail. The tail becomes part of the skeleton. It's called the tailbone. Tailbone.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. You know, about the eighth of an inch in length, in height. Not really dunking basketball yet, but we'll be working that way. The first 8 weeks, again, you're known as a fetus. And whether you're a zygote, morula, an embryo, or a fetus, you're a living human being. These are just terms applied to your particular times in your development, just like you were called an infant, or a child, or adolescent, or a young adult, or a senior citizen. All the same continuum. The beginning of our organs are present, not fully developed, and in some cases not even in the proper position yet. Again, the shapes of the lungs are nearly formed, and the intestines are beginning to coil. At this time, the digits on your hands and feet are present but webbed. As the fetus develops, that webbing, get into how it disappears, but it disappears, obviously. You begin reflex activities, but your movements are so slight, it's probably your mother's not going to feel it at this point. It's approximately about 2.5 inches in length now, and you can feel pain. Let me repeat this. At 8 weeks, you can feel pain. This is 10 weeks. Studies have shown that at 8 weeks, your fetus can feel pain. At 12 weeks, or 4 months, 3 months, I'm sorry, now you're beginning to look more like a fully formed person. Again, you can see the eyes and the dimness. Because my screen is nice and bright. Okay, so the organs are continuing to develop. Your kidneys are getting ready to produce urine. Your teeth and your skeleton are formed to the point that they would show up on an X-ray. At 16 weeks, you're now approximately 4 inches from tip of your head to your rump. And you weigh about 4.5 ounces. You're roughly the size of a small peach. You know, like the peach that has that soft, downy hair on it, in a waxy coat. So does the fetus. Look at it as kind of like a coat. Keep the fetus warm and somewhat waterproof. You can now be seen sucking your thumb, and your fingers begin to form fingerprints unique only to you. No one else on this planet has the same fingerprints as you. You cry, you wiggle your body. You may be startled if your mother moves too quickly or if you hear a loud noise. At 6 months or 24 weeks, all your organs are present and fully functional. You will continue to grow in mass and in length, but nothing new is added. Everything that you needed was there at conception. It's so well developed at this point that if you were to hiccup, the mother might actually detect that. Babies born prematurely at 6 months have survived and flourished. In fact, the earliest recorded premature birth was at 21 weeks. A number of years ago, over 20 years ago, I was talking to Michael about that, over 20 years ago, time flies, I shared a podium at the annual Michigan Right to Life convention in Lansing. Michigan's Right to Life, Barb Listing was the president at that time, is the strongest right to life in the nation. Many other states have been mentored by Barb and Michigan Right to Life. So I had an opportunity to share the podium with a gentleman, Michael Clancy, who is a photographer for USA Today. The Vanderbilt University Hospital had asked Michael if he would film this intra within the uterus surgery to help alleviate some of the problems of spinal bifida. So when the surgeon cut into the uterus, out comes this arm and fingers and grabs the surgeon's index finger. Michael shared with me, he said, Dan, he says, I almost dropped the camera. He says, I never expected to see this. Now, that does debunk that claim that we are only a clump of cells until we're born. Good-looking, intelligent young man, has some physical, challenges, spends some time out of his wheelchair, but because of spinal bifida, he still relies a lot on the wheelchair. There's been a number of other people you might have heard of that were born premature. Albert Einstein, Mark Twain, Picasso, Isaac Newton, even Stevie Wonder. At 7 months, you can now hear and recognize your mother's voice. Your skin has become pink. You're starting to look pretty darn cute. I actually think we look cute a long time ago. I mean, I even think of Morla looks cute, but I'm kind of strange that way. At 8 months, things are beginning to get a bit cramped, and you're getting anxious to get out. Stretch your legs, get your own bedroom, maybe even a cell phone, It's that time. At 9 months, your eyes are fully open, and you're alert and ready to finally meet your mother and father in person. You've rotated a complete 180 degrees in preparation for birth. Now, Colin already mentioned a bit about the Baby Olivia video, which we'll be viewing tonight. This is Lila Rose with live action. She was instrumental in producing this video. With AI now, it's just incredible what they can do. There's been a lot of false accusations that this was all just manipulated and none of it's true. Now, that's not the case. If you were to consult an individual that's knowledgeable about embryology, they'll back up everything that video shows. And again, there's been 6 states, recently the governors of Indiana and Iowa signed Baby Olivia bills in the law. These 2 states now join Kansas, Idaho, North Dakota, and Tennessee in requiring public schools to teach students about human development in the womb with truthful and scientifically accurate materials, which can include Baby Olivia. or a program similar to this. The legislation ensures that students in these states receive medically accurate and visually compelling educational materials in public schools. Currently, 20 states have introduced similar legislation. Again, this legislation requires medically accurate information. It is not a political agenda. The legislation insists on the material being not only medically accurate, but also peer-reviewed, bias-free, and respected both intellect and conscience. It's not about politics, but rather challenges all of us to see and acknowledge the value, the beauty, and the dignity in every stage of human life. As Colette or Mary Lou, I'm sure which one already alluded to, such legislation was introduced in Florida, but it was defeated. I can't wrap my head around it. Again, why? Regardless what your position is, why do you deny educational material from students? Once again, informed consent. If they make that terrible decision down the road, at least they had the information. There's too many abortions that occurred where the mother has no idea what's going on. Because, after all, just a clump of cells, right? Imagine the future where every state has passed their own Baby Olivia Act, and students across the country are being taught the truth about human development. Imagine an entire generation being raised up with the knowledge that life begins at the very moment of fertilization. There's been some reports of a 37-point swing from pro-choice to pro-life after seeing the video or some program similar to this. That's huge, 37-point swing. So now that we have better understanding about the milestones of our development within our mother's womb, let's take a look at this video. From a single-cell human to a baby with a beating heart, brainwave, fingers, and toes, this video of Baby Olivia shows a remarkable beauty of unique life within the womb. Again, it provides us a medically accurate glimpse of human life from the moment of fertilization until birth. The video details her growth as she progresses from one developmental stage to the next in preparation for her continuing life outside the womb, if she is allowed to be born.
This is Olivia. Though she has yet to greet the outside world, she has already completed an amazing journey. This is the moment that life begins. A new human being has come into existence. At fertilization, her gender, ethnicity, hair color, eye color, and countless traits are already determined. She begins to implant in the uterus about 1 week after fertilization. Her cells organize into what we call an embryo. At 3 weeks and 1 day, just 22 days after fertilization, Olivia's heartbeat can be detected. The buds of her arms and legs appear by 4 weeks. She begins to move between 5 and 6 weeks with both spontaneous and reflexive movements. At 6 weeks from fertilization, her brain activity can be recorded and bone formation begins. She can bring her hands together at 7.5 weeks, and separate fingers and toes emerge, She can also begin to hiccup. At the beginning of the 9th week, Olivia will have grown from a single cell into nearly 1 billion cells, and she is now called a fetus. She will suck her thumb and swallow, grasp an object, touch her face, sigh and stretch. At 11 weeks, she is playing in the womb, moving her body and exploring her environment. Her taste bud cells have matured by week 12 but are still scattered throughout her mouth. Her mother will first sense Olivia's movements between 14 and 18 weeks, an event called quickening. Beginning at 18 weeks, ultrasounds show speaking movements in her voice box. Around 20 weeks, with a lot of help, babies have survived outside the womb. At 27 weeks, her eyes are responding to light. She can recognize her parents' voices and will even recognize lullabies and stories. Olivia has gone on an amazing journey during these last 9 months. She will soon signal to her mother that it is time for delivery and greet the outside world.
With the, I call it the Jack and Jill and Baby Olivia scenarios. Jack and Jill, we're going to have a baby. They weren't expecting a baby. They're having a baby. Semantics mean a lot. If someone says so-and-so is expecting, politely say, no, she's not expecting. She already has a baby. So back to the Jack and Jill and Olivia scenario. Jack and Jill found out they're going to have a baby. And they're ecstatic, super excited. Fixing the nursery up, baby furniture, baby clothes. They even picked out a name for the baby girl, Olivia, Jill's grandmother. When Olivia was about 21 weeks old in Jill's womb, Jack and Jill received a phone call from the regional office. There was a manager offering them once in a lifetime career-changing opportunity. However, this opportunity is going to require a lot of travel, even international travel. You can almost see on the expression when they were talking to the manager, my gosh, what are we going to do? We're going to have a baby. So they asked the manager, could we please have a few days to think this over and make a decision? But needless to say, some sleepless nights and a lot of deep discussions deep into the night. They arrived at a decision. It's too great an opportunity to pass up. So they made a decision to terminate the pregnancy. Same couple, Jack and Jill. This time, when Olivia is 21 weeks old, she decides she wants out. And she was prematurely born. Now, Olivia is in the nursery, in a crib, when Jack and Jill get that same phone call from the regional manager with the offer. They didn't hesitate. So we certainly appreciate this, sir, for giving us this opportunity, but we can't accept we have a baby. So when Olivia was 21 weeks old, in a different location, same age, different location in the womb, she can be legally killed. When Olivia is 21 weeks old, same age, but in a different location, in the nursery, she's protected by all the laws that protect us. So help me out here. Are we to believe that location or age dictates the right to life? In the womb, legally, your life can be ended. Another location, fortunately, born prematurely, the life saved. So life is a continuum. Just as that zygote is smaller and less developed than the embryo, which in turn is smaller and less developed than the fetus is smaller and less developed than the infant, which in turn is smaller and less developed than the child, the adolescent, and the adult. At any time, if this continuum is interrupted, you don't exist anymore. Life is a continuum. Every human being, including an embryo or a fetus, has the most basic right, and that's the right to life. All other rights are illusory. There's no need for any other right. Who you marry, what job, career you choose, where you live, make no sense if you don't have the most basic right, the right to life. We have to educate current and future generations in the beauty of human life within the womb and outside the womb. I'll just touch on Florida abortion law. Again, if I was trying to get into a public school, this wouldn't be in there at all. You would not have heard abortion from me. Obviously, when I was teaching at a public college, I couldn't talk about abortion. In my embryology and human development, I never mentioned abortion. But these students aren't dumb. They can see the same things that you guys saw tonight. Something changes in their minds. Currently, an abortion can be legally performed, and correct me if there's any changes to this, up to the 7th week. That was signed in May of 2024, I believe, by DeSantis. There are exceptions to this where abortion could occur later, such if the pregnancy, if it were to continue to harm the mother. That's only 2.2%. And we all hear about what about rape or incest. Abortion can be performed later than that in the 6th week in that event, but only represents 0.4%. 96% of all abortions are elective. Granted, some of them are pressured. Young girls are pressured by boyfriends and parents and teachers and whatever. So I'm not making small of it, but it is elective. In 2024, abortion was the leading cause of death worldwide. Abortion accounted for more deaths than all other deaths due to cancer, HIV, traffic fatalities, wars, and suicide combined. A staggering 73 million babies were aborted in 2024. Either call it, or Mary Lou mentioned about Roe v. Wade, that we made a lot of progress. In a way we have, but it kind of backfired on us because what's on the market now? The abortion pill. These numbers don't reflect. When we talk about abortions, they're not bringing in the abortion pill because how can you monitor something like that? I have a program on that, also on abortion pill, and it's alarming. It's alarming that the FDA is allowing it. Abortion accounted for over 42% of all deaths worldwide in 2024. Worldwide, there is a war being waged against unborn children, and it must stop. And that's why we're here, to get educated and do what we can. I know you have a closing prayer, but I like to, this is a prayer that we use around Respect Life. I'm looking at Karen here. We use this at the beginning of all of our Respect Life ministry meanings and OLL. And I'd like you to pray this with me if you would. Lord God, I thank you today for the gift of life and for the lives of all my brothers and sisters. I know there's nothing that destroys more life than abortion. Yet I rejoice that you conquered death by the resurrection of your Son. I am ready to do my part in the abortion. Today I commit myself never be passive, never, never.
I commit myself to be active in the pro-life movement and never stop defending life until all my brothers and sisters are protected. And our nation once again comes an issue with liberty and justice, not as their son, but for all. Through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Let me conclude this with a simple statement. Adoption is always an option. Adoption is always an option. Every child waiting to be adopted, there are 94 couples wanting to adopt. Yes, it can be a huge inconvenience to a young lady or a young girl trying to finish high school or go on to college or have a career and everything else. But it's 9 months of your life. 9 months of your life versus destroying a life.